There are moments in time when God pulls back the veil and reveals what human eyes cannot yet see. August 16th, 2025 is not just another date on the calendar. It carries a weight, a message, a revelation. For on that day the word came forth, a removal from power, a shaking of what was thought to be unshakable, a reminder to every nation and every heart that no throne, no crown, no ruler stands above the throne of heaven. When God shows the rise of power, he also shows the fall. And why? Because power in the hands of man is never permanent. Kings, presidents, rulers, leaders, they all come and they all go. But the one who appoints and removes, the one who raises up and tears down, remains forever. The message here is not merely about a person, a ruler, or an event. It is about a truth that should stir us deeply, that no matter how strong the forces of this world appear, they are nothing before the hand of God. What does it mean for us? It means that when injustice seems to reign, God is still in control. When corruption looks immovable, God is still moving. When fear grips nations, God is writing a story greater than our eyes can comprehend. The removal of power is not the end. It is the beginning of something new, a reset, a turning point meant to draw us back to him. Do not fear the shakings. Do not tremble at the storms. For every shaking is meant to awaken. Every fall of man's power is meant to remind us of the power that never fails. On August 16th, 2025, whether the world notices or not, heaven's voice will thunder, I am still God and no one can stand against my will. Take this not as a word of terror, but as a word of hope. Because if he can remove the mighty, he can also lift up the humble. If he can dethrone the proud, he can crown the faithful. And if he can shift the course of nations, he can shift the course of your life. The same hand that moves governments is the same hand that can move the mountains standing in your way. So let this day, this vision, this revelation not be about fear, but about faith. Trust the one who writes history. Trust the one who appoints the seasons. Trust the one who shows that no matter how dark the night, the dawn is coming. The removal of one is not the end of the story. It is proof that God is the author of it all. Every empire that once seemed unshakable has eventually crumbled into dust. Kings who wore crowns of gold, rulers who commanded armies, leaders who thought their names would echo forever, all became memories written in history books. Palaces turned into ruins, and thrones that once stood firm are now empty. This is the truth about earthly power. It is temporary, fragile, and fleeting. No matter how strong, how influential, or how feared a person may be, their reign does not last forever. Time has proven again and again that no human power can withstand the weight of eternity. Yet above all of this stands the eternal power of God. His authority is not bound by time or weakened by human failure. While earthly rulers rise and fall like the tides, his dominion never wavers. What he speaks remains unbroken, and what he establishes endures beyond generations. Unlike human authority, his power is not borrowed, contested, or limited. It is infinite. Nations can crumble, governments can collapse, but his word remains unshaken. Where human strength fades, his strength grows ever brighter. When we witness someone in power, it may appear as though they control the future, shaping laws, influencing economies, and leading millions. But behind the veil of human authority lies a greater hand orchestrating all things. Even the mightiest leaders cannot exceed the boundaries set by the Creator. Their decisions, their seasons in power, and their eventual removal all unfold under the gaze of one who holds eternity in his hands. This realization should humble every ruler and encourage every believer, for no authority is greater than the one who reigns forever. History teaches us this lesson clearly. Pharaoh once enslaved an entire people and seemed untouchable, yet he fell beneath the power of God. Nebuchadnezzar stood as the ruler of a mighty empire, but was brought low to learn humility before the Almighty. Kings and kingdoms that boasted of their own greatness eventually faced the truth that human strength has limits. Their stories remind us that those who trust in earthly power will eventually be disappointed, but those who trust in the eternal power of God will never be put to shame. This truth also speaks into our personal lives. Sometimes we may feel crushed under the weight of powerful people or overwhelming systems. It may seem like certain forces control our future and dictate our destiny. But when we remember that God's power is eternal, our perspective shifts. No boss, no government, no opposition can override the plans he has written for our lives. The hands of men may try to block doors, but when God decides to open them, no power can keep them shut. Earthly power is like a shadow that disappears with the setting sun, but God's power is like the light of dawn that rises and never fades. It endures through storms, outlasts kingdoms, and shines beyond generations. If we anchor our hope in human strength, we will face disappointment. But if we anchor our hope in the eternal, unshakable power of God, we stand on a foundation that will never crumble. When the ground beneath your life begins to shake, it can feel like everything is collapsing. Dreams you held on to may seem to fall apart, plans may crumble, and the stability you once depended on can vanish. In those moments, it is easy to believe the shaking is meant to destroy you, to end your progress, and to silence your hope. But the truth is that shakings are not sent to destroy, they are sent to awaken. They come as a divine alarm clock, stirring hearts, minds, and souls to see what has been ignored and to prepare for something greater. When life is too comfortable, people often grow complacent. They settle into routines, attach themselves to what is temporary, and forget to look higher. Shakings interrupt that false sense of security and remind us that what we thought was unshakable might not be as permanent as we believed. Jobs can vanish, relationships can change, finances can be unstable, but these tremors serve to redirect our trust toward what is eternal. Instead of clinging to fragile structures, shakings push us to root ourselves in foundations that cannot be moved. It is in times of shaking that the hidden weaknesses are revealed. Just as an earthquake tests the strength of a building, so too do life's tremors reveal the cracks within our lives. The areas we ignored, the truths we avoided, and the choices we delayed all come to the surface. But this exposure is not meant for shame or ruin. It is meant for awakening. By seeing what is fragile, we are invited to rebuild stronger, wiser, and more aligned with purpose. The shaking exposes what cannot stand, but it also shows us where to stand firm. Consider how shaking clears away the unnecessary. Trees shaken by the wind lose dead leaves so that new growth can come forth. In the same way, our lives often hold on to things that cannot remain. Toxic relationships, misplaced priorities, or harmful habits. When the shaking comes, it loosens our grip on those things and forces us to see what truly matters. What we thought we couldn't live without sometimes falls away. And only then do we realize that we are freer, lighter, and better prepared to move forward. Shakings also awaken urgency. When life moves along smoothly, people can delay important decisions, assuming tomorrow will always come. But when the ground shakes, it reminds us that tomorrow is not promised, and today is the time to act. It awakens a seriousness about how we live, what we value, and what we pursue. It reminds us that there is more to life than survival. There is destiny, calling, and purpose waiting to be fulfilled. Most importantly, shakings often lead to transformation. They turn sleeping hearts into awakened souls ready to see with clarity. What feels like breaking is often the beginning of building something new. What feels like loss is often making room for greater gain. Shakings strip away illusions so that truth can shine brighter. They don't come to bury us. They come to wake us up so we can rise stronger, wiser, and closer to the life we were always meant to live. From the beginning of time, the truth has remained constant. No throne, no crown, no ruler, and no individual stands outside the authority of God. Kingdoms have risen and fallen. Empires have been built and destroyed. Leaders have come and gone. Yet above them all, one authority remains unshaken. It is not limited to palaces, parliaments, or positions of power. It extends to the lives of individuals, to the quiet corners of ordinary homes, to the prayers whispered in the night, and to the cries of those who feel unseen. The same hand that directs the course of nations is also guiding the path of every person who trusts him. History proves again and again that even the mightiest rulers are subject to a higher power. Pharaoh thought he could defy divine authority, but his arrogance collapsed before the strength of one greater than him. Nebuchadnezzar, who once boasted in his glory, was humbled until he acknowledged where true sovereignty lies. Entire empires, from Babylon to Rome, that once believed themselves eternal are now reduced to ruins and lessons for generations. These examples remind us that no human government, no political system, no army, and no ideology is beyond the reach of divine control. Nations may plot, leaders may scheme, but in the end, all things are bent toward fulfilling a higher purpose. Yet this authority is not only exercised on the global stage, it reaches down to the very personal details of our lives. The same power that shapes the course of history also numbers the hairs on our heads and knows every step we take. It means that no one is too small, too forgotten, or too insignificant to be seen. The struggles of a single heart matter just as much as the decisions of kings. The battles fought in silence, the prayers spoken in secret, and the tears shed in loneliness all fall under the same authority that governs the movements of stars and the rise and fall of nations. This reality should bring both humility and comfort. Humility because it reminds us that human pride, wealth, or power is fleeting. Comfort because it reassures us that we are not left alone in chaos. If God governs nations, he certainly governs the life of one individual. If he can bring down empires, he can lift up the broken. If he can set boundaries for oceans, he can set direction for a wandering heart. There is a profound unity in this truth. The authority that orders the vastness of history is the same authority that whispers into your life, I am with you. It is not fragmented, not divided, not partial. It is complete, absolute, and unwavering. The great lesson is to trust that whether it be in the rise of a nation or the choices you make today, everything rests under the same guiding hand. What feels uncertain to us is not uncertain to him, and what feels out of control in our sight is still fully under his control. This is the unshakable truth. His authority extends everywhere, over all people, and into every detail of existence. Hope that is built on human systems, human leaders, or human promises will always be fragile. Throughout history, men and women have placed their trust in rulers, governments, wealth, or achievements only to watch them fail, collapse, or vanish. The truth is that human rule is temporary, limited, and imperfect. No leader, no matter how wise or powerful, can guarantee peace, security, or justice forever. Even the greatest of empires have crumbled, the strongest economies have faltered, and the brightest minds have faced limitations. When hope is anchored in these things alone, it is bound to sink when the storms of life rise. But hope placed in God's control is steady, immovable, and eternal. This kind of hope does not depend on circumstances or shifting seasons of life. It is rooted in the unchanging nature of the one who holds all things together. When nations tremble, this hope remains. When economies fall, this hope does not. When uncertainty shakes the world, this hope becomes the anchor that steadies the soul. It tells us that even when everything seems to be unraveling, there is still order behind the chaos, a plan behind the pain, and a purpose that is being worked out. This is not blind optimism, but a certainty that comes from knowing that ultimate control rests in hands far stronger than ours. The beauty of this truth is that it transforms the way we live in uncertain times. If hope were dependent on rulers or policies, then despair would be inevitable whenever leaders fail. But because hope is rooted in divine control, despair is never the final answer. Even in loss, there can be confidence. Even in suffering, there can be peace. Even in endings, there can be new beginnings. What seems like a closed door may actually be the doorway to something greater. What feels like defeat may be preparation for a deeper victory. Hope in God's control means believing that no matter what happens, there is a higher plan unfolding. This hope also carries a personal message for each individual life. It means that mistakes do not define the end of your story. Failures do not erase your worth. Brokenness does not cancel out your future. Just as nations rise and fall under divine timing, so too do the seasons of personal life unfold under the same guidance. There is no situation too hopeless for his power, no darkness too deep for his light, and no ending that he cannot turn into a new beginning. Hope becomes more than an idea. It becomes the strength to keep moving forward when everything says give up. To live with this hope is to live with courage. It is to stand firm when the world shakes, to remain steady when everything feels unstable, and to shine with confidence when others are consumed by fear. It is the reminder that the foundation of life is not human rule, but divine control. And when hope is built on that foundation, it cannot be broken, shaken, or destroyed. The message is clear. No matter how powerful earthly leaders may appear, their rule is temporary, but the hand that governs eternity never changes. Shakings in life are not meant to destroy, but to awaken, reminding us that the true throne is higher than any human seat of power. The authority that directs nations is the same authority that moves in individual lives, proving that nothing is beyond his reach. And in the end, hope is not found in human strength, governments, or rulers, but in the certainty that divine control never fails. This hope becomes the anchor that steadies us in chaos, the light that shines in darkness, and the assurance that no matter what happens, the future is safe in his hands.